Hi, Linz.
Hi, Mo.
Hi, Bagel.
Hi, Mo.
Okay, so today on the esteemed Moby Pod program, we're going to talk to Leah Garcés, who runs Mercy for Animals.
She is one of my animal rights heroes. She just wrote a book called Transfarmation, the movement to free us from factory farming. And it's so special. There's so much research and the people that she's talked to, and she's put so much effort and energy into making this book thorough and personable and, you know, relatable in all the ways. And also, she's just cool. Like, Leah Garcés is just a cool person. I really like her.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. And one other thing, when we were talking to Leah, that really struck me is that there's so many cool people who sort of started out as vegan punk rockers in high school. You know, they get interested in animal rights when they're 14, 15, 16. And then as they become adults, they go out into the world and figure out what's the best way to responsibly turn their activism into an ongoing career. And that when you say career, you normally think of people who want to make money. And obviously no one gets into the world of animal rights to make money.
Yeah.
But there's so many grown-up activists and vegans who've been doing this for decades, and they look at the world like Leah and they figure out, okay, where can I use my strengths and my abilities to take my activism out into the world?
Yeah, it's like it starts you off in like a mode of you are questioning the system from childhood, basically, and then you grow up to build a life where it's just professionally questioning a broken system.
And she says it better than anyone, so why don't we go talk to Leah?
Let's talk to Leah.
So Leah, it goes without saying, thank you for coming over to my house and talking to us about yourself and animals and activism and Bagel and the Bad Brains and DC Straight Edge and what else do I have on my list? I have a very professional list of things on my paper. So one thing we've noticed, because we've talked to a lot of our activist heroes, and what we've learned is, for the most part, a lot, like we were talking to Dr. Greger, and no one had ever asked him about anything involving his life before the age of 40, basically. Like,
yeah.
Like he almost didn't have I was like, so I don't, like I Googled him, I was looking at his Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Like he was born and then he turned 40. Which seems like it's the case with so many people. Like it's which is understandable. Sorry for rambling on, but like people define themselves through their passionate activism, and sometimes think like, oh well, my origin story isn't that interesting. But we found a lot of people, like Dan Buettner's origin story is fascinating. Like riding bikes across the Sahara Desert and riding bikes from Alaska to Patagonia because he was inspired by George Plimpton. I was like, well, that's not in your Wikipedia.
Yeah.
So to that end. Where were you born and why?
I was born in Madrid, Spain. And my dad is Colombian. My mom is American. And because my dad spoke fluent Spanish, he was working for an American company and they transferred him there. And I spent the first 3 years of my life. Then we moved back to the US. Then we moved back to Spain until I was 17. So that's the where and the why, basically.
And when you were growing up, because I love hearing about people's first sort of like formative experiences with animals. Some people, and also we'll have guests on the show and I'll be like, oh, so when you were growing up, did you have experiences with animals? And I'm looking for some like great, insightful, emotional anecdote. And the answer sometimes, no.
Yeah.
Like I think it was Dr. Greger who like his entire childhood, I don't think he even met an animal. or it definitely was not like some powerful transformational origin animal story. So which camp are you in? Did you have like powerful transformational emotional connection with animals growing up? Or are you in the Dr. Greger camp of you never met an animal until you were 21?
I don't think they were powerful transformational, but I loved animals growing up. And when in between my two stations in Spain, we lived in the swamps of Florida in Orlando and in the Orlando area. And
how and why? What did your dad do that led him?
He worked for Westinghouse Siemens, which he was a sales engineer. So the headquarters for Westinghouse was in Orlando. So that's why he lived there. And they would send him out. He would like go to Mexico. He lived in Spain. Like we lived in different places because of that. But that was the headquarters. So the station was Orlando, which also is known as Borlando or Orblando. Lots of not great things about Orlando. But the great things about Orlando that are secret to only the people that live there is the wetlands of Florida, which are just beautiful, rich places of nature. And right in our backyard was a canal, was a kind of river that backed up into the Wekiva Springs. And from there were wild turkeys and otters and ducks, bears, like you name it. And in particular, I had a thing for ducks. And the ducks, each season, and sometimes out of season, would lay their eggs right backed up into my porch. In Florida, you have these screened-in porches, you know, to keep the mosquitoes out.
Are they called lanais?
I don't know. As a kid, it was a porch, but probably.
I think in the show Dexter, like his girlfriend kept going out to the lanai.
Could be.
And I was bored, so I looked up on Wikipedia.
What's a lanai? Yes. Well, and that's a new part of my vocabulary then too. And so the mama ducks would waddle in, and my mom had these like massive flowers that no one was allowed to touch, no one except the mama ducks. And so they would come in and they'd make their nice little nest like in these impatient flowers, which are these bright, beautiful flowers. And they'd be under the impatiens, backed up into the porch, and we could see everything happening. So my brother, sister, and I got this like front row seat to the lives of ducks. And we'd wait until like the first day they hatch, and you'd see the little like a foot or a beak or a head coming out first. And we'd see these ducks' lives like unfold before us. And we'd see the first time they'd go out in the canal, for example, with the mom, and they'd follow. And my parents, although they would not call themselves animal activists at all, and in many respects were very different, but were very similar in that they felt like they were the like unspoken guardians of these ducks. So, it was the 80s, and my dad's like in his corporate tie and his like short sleeve work shirt, going out in the canoe, following the mom duck because there's alligators and there's otters. And he's like carefully with a net picking up the duckling that fell behind that would have been eaten and putting it in the canoe, and then returning it to the nest. Returning her or him to the nest. And my mom, and so every once in a while, the ducks would lay their eggs out of season during the winter, and it'd be cold. And my mom and the mama ducks had this thing going where she would lay the eggs right under the dryer vent. And every time that the mom would leave, my mom would be like, dryer on. And my dad would be like, why is the bill so expensive? So I grew up with this really love and like knowledge that they're just like us. Like they have families, they have dramas, and ducks are super dramatic, by the way. They're very drama prone animals. Lots of things happening in their dynamics and their families. And I grew up with this like firm realization that these birds are just like us, no question, like observed my whole life in my childhood. And I remember growing up, and the first time I found out about factory farming, it was so upsetting.
How did you find out? Because I had to do a lot of work to find out.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering how that came to you.
I was about 15, and I was living in Spain at the time, and my parents sent me over to stay with my cousin in Florida. And across the street from her lived a guy who I happen to now be married to, who had a friend, and the four of us were hanging out. And I guess like a PETA commercial came up. I don't know. It was I don't remember. It was on PBS. It was one of those late night. I don't know if you remember. There used to be like these late night PETA ads that would come out, about slaughter or whatever. And it was something like a Meet Your Meat before Meet Your Meat. Because I later looked up, when did Meet Your Meat come out? And it was before that. And I watched that. I couldn't believe it. We were all shocked. And this cute guy I had a crush on was straight edge already, and his friend was straight edge. So they were already into that scene, and we all like overnight were like, we're committed. That's it. You know, we're doing this. But I wasn't vegan right away. That was like, I don't think we knew. It was the flesh that was the association. You know, I just didn't make the association with the other products. But I went vegan when I was 15 after watching that. And jokingly, not jokingly, because I had a crush on this guy and wanted to impress him and be part of his like cool straight edge scene.
So I will say, when we first started talking about your childhood, you said you didn't know if you had a dramatic origin story. I'd say that's a pretty fantastic origin story. Like,
Yeah.
Growing up with a front row seat to duck drama and your dad canoeing and following the ducks around and making sure they're safe. Like, I'm going to put that in my top 10 animal origin stories.
Really good.
Yeah, that is really, I didn't know that PETA had TV ads because back in the 80s, I didn't have a TV.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind me asking, what year, so
I was 15. I am 46. I don't know.
So 31 years ago.
Yeah. So I was, I don't know,
So
90, I don't know, kind of math on the spot. But yeah, mid 90s, let's say.
And that's amazing. So so you and your now husband have been in each other's lives since then?
And he's been straight edge since he was 15?
Yeah, ish. He has he drinks now, but not that much.
He's currently drunk in the car right now.
Yeah, he's home alone with 3 kids. He's
listening to Joe Rogan and punching the steering wheel.
Exactly. He had a band, and he did the permanent marker X on his hand.
What was the name of the band? I love straight edge band names.
He's gonna be mad. I don't remember, but he had another band in college called Autumn and Fall.
Yeah. More emo.
Yeah, Autumn and Fall.
Really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, straight edge. That's sort of like Dashboard Confessional and like the earlier the straight edge punk bands all have just the best.
I'll get after. He's going to be so mad at
that. All sound like important books from 1952.
You got to find out. We'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, I will. We'll definitely do that. Yes. So and it's interesting because I think people that are still animal activists at my age either came up through a lot of people came up through straight edge or they're hippies. And I was in the hippie category. I thought the wild straight edge guy was the guy but I was the Grateful Dead person, and I was more peace and love and, yoga and that kind of stuff. And so there's these two philosophies that made a lot of people today the activist leaders that they are.
It's sort of like you and Gene Bauer.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand is the sort of youth of today, Gorilla Biscuits, punk rock.
Yes, exactly.
Lindsay and Bagel and I even made a movie about the punk rock vegan world.
I know. It's very cool.
It was kind of a big budget movie. We spent $85,000 on it. Yeah.
Wow, you went crazy.
Yeah, it went wild. How did your family/community outside of your very cool group receive your veganism, animal rightsiness?
My parents, I definitely think they thought it was a phase. So, and my mom would try to make certain things to tempt me out of it, She'd make a lamb or something. She'd roast it all day. And I'd be like, that's so gross. I can't even think of anything worse than a baby animal.
Did they have any concern? Because my mom, when I went vegan in 87, it triggered something in her that I'd never seen before, which was this angry, and I'm not criticizing her, but she was so furious about nutrition. Yeah. All of a sudden she became obsessed. And growing up, I ate garbage.
Yeah.
But it was garbage from Stop and Shop. It was American garbage.
Yeah.
It was French bread pizzas and Coke. Yeah. And there's never even a question of nutrition. But the moment I go vegan and start shopping in health food stores, all of a sudden she becomes livid. Where are you going to get these nutrients? And I was so it was okay when I was having deep fried ice cream and just bags of garbage.
Yeah.
I didn't actually. I'm just trying to exaggerate. Sound cool.
Fried ice cream sounds amazing. That sounds like more of the Texas thing.
That's a thing.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll deep fry anything.
Mars bars.
Deep fried butter.
In Scotland.
They'll just deep fry a whole stick of butter.
Yeah.
But it was funny growing up was never a single mention of nutrition as you're eating the worst food that has ever been created.
Yeah.
And then the moment you start, like hanging out in a health food store, all of a sudden, where's your nutrition coming from? It's like, well, the food that I'm buying. And I don't know if your parents, or Lindsay, if your parents either had any concerns about if they got angry about nutrition.
Well, yeah, I think that everyone has kind of sold this thing of like, you just need the protein that only meat can give you, and you need the calcium from dairy, and then everything else is just kind of like, if it's there, then fine.
Speaking of which, I just found out they made a documentary about the Liver King.
Oh, really?
Oh.
You know the guy that was just blending up raw livers and drinking them?
Oh, yeah.
And apparently,
Did he die?
No, I think he's still alive, but and I'm hesitant to watch the documentary because apparently there's like scenes of him eating or forcing his kids to eat
Organs.
but organs from animals who aren't dead yet.
Oh my God. What?
Something that's the review I read, and so I'm like, I don't know. I clearly couldn't handle that.
No.
But also,
Who could?
it could be worth watching because
Isn't that
apparently
cruelty illegal? Like, how is
Yeah.
that?
I would think so. I might have misread it. Wow. It might have just been fresh organs from a recently killed animal.
Either way, I'm getting a little nauseous.
Yes. But the good thing is, not surprisingly, he's a complete fraud. Like in the documentary, they show he's just all he does is take steroids. Constantly, 5 times a day, just constant steroid use. And it's all fake. The whole thing.
There's so much fake nutrition knowledge online now.
But it's like whatever you want to believe, there's some place that will support it based on anything.
It's really hard to find the truth.
Yeah, it's very, very hard to find the truth out there. So anyway, so my family was very much like, meat and dairy, the only way you're going to get what you need.
Yeah.
Which is just brainwashing.
Yeah. You know, I don't remember my mom being that resistant. My mom stayed at home, took care of us, and she made things like lentil soup and like chickpea, blah, blah, blah. So she had a good mix of legumes and things in there anyway, and was really into like whole foods before it was cool. Like, I remember her coming home. She was like, I went to this workshop today, and now we're going to eat this bread that's like this, like, you know, very heavy German, like whole food with lots of seeds. And we're like, oh God. Yeah. And she's like, this is what we're eating now. We're all going to eat. Like, and that would be a phase that we would go through for a year where we'd eat, you know. So I think she was very flexible with us. She tells me that like she would make, like, everybody had a different lunch of the three of us, and mine was like a chickpea salad. Like, that was my lunch that she made me every day.
High school with chickpea salad.
I went with a chickpea salad.
Nothing says cool in high school.
Oh
like
yeah,
a chickpea
real
salad.
cool,
Yeah.
real cool. I was super cool with my chickpea salad. So she, you know, she was on board. I think I had a much harder time, probably culturally, with my dad's side of the family, who are Colombian, and there was this understanding that meat equaled like success, meat equaled prosperity, and also masculinity and strength, obviously, for the men. But for me, like when Ben and I we didn't want to have any animal products at our wedding. And we were very young when we got married. We were 21, 22. And we didn't have money to get married otherwise. And my parents wanted to do this big wedding. And so did I. That would be fun. But my parents were like, you can't not, like, my dad's like, the signal this will send to our Colombian family is that we are being cheap. You can't not have meat at the wedding. And it was so upsetting for me and so difficult. And we agreed on one thing that they could have to signal to the Colombian family. This wasn't us being cheap or us being poor or whatever. Like, it was a thing. It was a very difficult cultural clash on the tradition of like masculinity, wealth, and prosperity. That was a more challenging thing. Fast forward to my dad having a heart attack in 2018 because of his meat consumption. And I went to and he survived. And I went to his first cardiology appointment with him and took him into his appointment. And his doctor, first thing he says, and this is amazing, like the universe has little treats for us, you know, that gives us little treats. The cardiologist says, sir, you need to eat a plant-based diet. And he's like, oh, you had to say that in front of her. She's been telling me for decades. God, really? Really? Couldn't wait till she left the room. Mm-hmm. And my parents are virtually plant-based now because of health reasons. And when that barrier on that came down with like, I have to be healthy now, then they could open up to the other things like, yeah, this is really not nice to animals. But anyway.
That's amazing. I've had people in my family have had very similar experiences of like, you can pick.
Yeah.
Do you want to live and eat a plant-based diet or die?
Yeah.
And have animal protein in your diet?
Yeah.
You pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, a friend of mine, her brother, I think he's in his 30s now, very, very obese, diabetes, tons and tons, like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high everything. And the doctor has said, like, oh, if you don't essentially become a vegan, you'll be dead soon. Guess what he's choosing? To be dead soon.
Wow. Yeah. A lot of people can't make the choice.
It's just so mind-boggling.
They really struggle, which speaks to like how difficult changing diet can be. If you're faced with your own death and you'd rather do that than change your diet, it really speaks to how difficult it can be. And it makes me feel more empathetic towards folks who are struggling to make the change.
Yes, the aspirational part of me agrees.
Yeah.
But when I went vegan in 1987, there was nothing to eat.
Yeah.
I was broke. I was making $2,000 a year. We figured it out.
Yeah. So I wonder what that is.
I think humans are naturally a little bit destructive and violent. And I think that...
So it's a mental health issue?
Yes, I think it's a mental health issue.
And that profound fear of the other. Like, I went on a weird date during the first Bush administration with a woman who worked in the Bush administration, and she was being sent to Iraq. And I was like, wow, how do you feel about that? And she said, oh, professionally, this is so exciting. She's like, I'm getting posted to Iraq in the middle of the war. I was like, wow, you're not scared? And she said, yeah, I am really scared. I don't know what I'm going to eat. And I was like, well, it's the Middle East. Middle Eastern food is great. And she was like, no. I like I said, what about hummus? What about baba ganoush? What about tabbouleh? Like all these,
Yeah.
And her, like, that's what terrified her. And then eventually she found out that in the green zone in Baghdad, they had McDonald's, they had Burger King, they brought in all the American food. So she didn't have to be afraid. She was like,
dear.
okay, well, at least I get to have Burger King and McDonald's 3 meals a day.
Oh, no.
But like that, going there and not being afraid of IEDs and getting killed, she was fine with that. It's the fear that someone might force her to eat hummus. So,
wow.
Yikes.
Yep.
Yikes.
Well, I mean, the diets have changed, like you're saying about being vegan so easy today. And the first time I think I ever had falafels, I was in college. The first time I ever had like vegan sushi was in college. But I remember going to like this place called the Brand Tub and getting TVP out of a bin with a shovel and like rehydrating it. I don't, and
whatever happened to TVP?
Why don't I know what
textured vegetable protein?
Yeah, it was the staple. It was one of those weird early vegan staples, along with like brewer's yeast and nutritional yeast.
I mean, I still use nutritional yeast.
Yeah, of course. That's like that's a standard.
Textured vegetable protein was like, I think it's soy based, and it's just this
just
like
powder.
No, it's like dog food.
Yeah, these little granules, and you could make chili out of it. But it's Lindsay, you look horrified. It's delicious.
It was
I'm
good.
sure it's great, but when you explain it like it's dog food,
It looks like dog food.
It's got a sort
It's like
of
hard pellets, or not pellets.
crumbly kibble.
and then what do you
quality
do?
to
You
it.
put them in water or something?
Yeah, you cook it. It like rehydrates in a stew, or
It's great. I don't think it's necessarily that. It's very processed.
How can I get my hands on some TVP?
I don't know, build a time machine and go back to 1989 and go to Prana on First Avenue and like move the sad cat off the bin and scoop up some TVP.
Yeah.
That is so amazing. So, okay. So you are in high school, you've gone vegan.
You're eating falafel.
You're eating, but now you're in college.
Yes.
And you're having falafel. Did you know at that time when you were picking where to go to college and what you were going to do, kind of what you wanted to do with your life?
No, I didn't know animal activism was a choice. I didn't know that was a career. I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know anybody who did that. I didn't have access to that. I grew up in a really conservative family. Like people were like did traditional jobs like teacher, engineer, doctor, lawyer. Like these are the things. Like you are, if you want to do service, you are a teacher. If you want to do like, I don't know, fixing things, you're an engineer. That's all my family are those people. And I didn't know that was a choice. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll be a doctor. That's what I think I'll do. But I want to help animals. So I guess I'll be a vet. I really like animals. So I went to University of Florida, and I had gotten into a bunch of other schools, but they were really expensive and Florida was free. And I went there, and there I had a roommate in my second year who was vegan and who was like an animal person. And we were both working like to get our zoology degree. And she started like leaving me little nuggets of information. And this was when I realized, oh, there's something else. I don't know what it is. And she wasn't an activist. She was just a vegan, and just somebody, and I wasn't vegan yet. I was like probably 95% vegan, but wasn't hardcore. And when I finished my zoology degree, I was like, I don't want to be a vet. I toured some vet schools and saw what was happening. And I was like, wait a minute. First of all, it looks like you all are just killing animals. I don't understand what's happening here. Like there was just a lot of dissection, a lot of, and at the time where I was in Florida, I didn't have any access to any information of any other alternative. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And my mentor said to me, you know what? You don't want to be a vet. And it's probably one of the best things he ever said. He said, you don't be a vet. Vets are plumbers. They fix animals once they're already broken. You seem like you're curious about the root of the problem. Why don't you come do a PhD with me? Like, we'll see what you're interested in. And I also looked around his situation and I was like, no, zoology also kills animals. I don't want to dissect animals to get my degrees. And so I looked around and I thought I'll do something around sustainable development, agriculture development, something like that. And I came home and I remember telling my parents, and I had all along I was going to be a vet, and they were like, what is this thing you want to do? Can you get a job? I don't understand. And there were only two, and this was 1999, so it was like the very beginning stages of the ideas of sustainable development, sustainable agriculture, those sorts of things. And there were only three places that had degrees. There was BU, Tufts, and King's College in London. And I went to King's College because, again, I was following where's cheapest. And it was London, and I had lived in Spain, and I wanted to get back to Europe. And I decided that's where I would go. So I went to London. We were the first cohort to do the degree. And it was a kind of choose your own adventure master's degree. And at the end of it, I got out of it. And while I was in London, that's where the world opened up to me, because animal activism had been a profession for 25 years at this stage already. This was people had jobs that they got paid, and they worked in organizations where people go and wear suits and ties. And it's like, oh, this is a thing you can do. This is a real job and I had no idea. It just blew my mind that somehow this whole world had been hidden from me where I had been living in Florida. And when I got to London, I got a job at Compassion World Farming, which was a organization that I worked at right out of my degree that works on ending factory farming. And I basically did not look back from there, and have been working to protect animals and end factory farming in particular since my first job.
And when did you start at Mercy for Animals?
About 7 years ago now. Yeah. So.
And that's when Milo.
Yeah. I mean, Mercy for Animals' origin story is he was 15 when he started Mercy for Animals. And it was a club at his high school that he started that turned into what we are today, which is an international animal activist organization. So he didn't go to college. This is what he did. His whole 20s were, some of us were, I was working in a professional organization and going around and visiting different countries. He was building MFA from the ground up. So he, I think, wanted a break after 20 years of doing that. Fair enough. And that's when he called me and he said, literally flew to my house in Atlanta, was on my doorstep and said, do you want this job? I think you're the person to do it. And I didn't hesitate, really. I made a few phone calls, is this my highest, best use? Because I was running Compassion World Farming USA at the time, and I thought I was making pretty good progress. But I saw that there was a need, and that's my calculus I usually do is like highest best use. Like, where is there anybody else? What's the trade-off if I stop here and do that? And so I jumped in and took over 7 years ago.
How have you found it since you started there? Like, when you came in, what was your like first big move to make within MFA?
Yeah, well, we were about 100 people. We're about almost 200 now. And the biggest move was really opening our tent a little wider is my it's just how I operate. And really thinking about how can we bring more people to this movement in all ways, like not just people who are ready to sign up to be vegan today, but they're going to take their very first baby step towards helping ending the cruelest system humans could have invented. And that took some time because if you are part of this movement, there's a kind of purity test. And I was almost given the purity test too when I entered. Like, to be vegan is such a choice, it's a big choice that you make. And I wanted to make the bar a little lower for people to join us in helping animals. And so that was broadening the tent was a big part of my project and still is. I think that's what I'm kind of one of my purposes. And this included bringing a project I had come up with while I was at Compassion Wheel Farming, but hadn't been able to live out, was this idea of working with factory farmers to end factory farming, which was, now is been a success. But then people were like, you're literally talking to the enemy. What are you doing? What is wrong with you? Yeah,
that aspect of things. And I really want to dive into the sort of the transformation aspect of things. We vegans do love our good puns.
I'm pretty proud of that, I have to say.
It's really good. I have a transformation hat, and every time I wear it, people are like, tell me more. And I'm like, I will.
But you're right. I spoke at a Direct Action Everywhere conference about probably 7 or 8 years ago. And, I've been vegan for 37 years. And I was speaking, I was saying, well, I appreciate everyone's passion, but the passion should not be judgment. And the passion should not involve exclusion. And the passion should not involve especially criticizing each other. Because the amount of infighting with all activist movements. And I did something a little obnoxious. I said, at some point, everybody here was a meat eater when I wasn't. I don't judge you guys. Like in 1987, when I went vegan, you all were going to Burger King. Guaranteed. I only know one person who's been vegan longer than me. It's Gene Bauer. So I sort of wagged my finger at the audience and I said, look, I'm not judging you for all the times you ate meat when I wasn't eating meat and dairy.
Yeah.
So it's never our place to judge other people, especially if that judgment depletes everyone's energy and takes resources, literal and figurative resources away from the work we're trying to do. It drives me a little bit crazy. So I really love that idea of like, you reach people where they are.
Yeah.
It's kind of like in the world of punk rock in the 80s. It's like you can't expect some kid who's never heard Black Flag or the Bad Brains to go from listening to the Bee Gees to listening to Black Flag.
Right.
There are steps. And like everyone's taken those steps. We've all taken those steps. And to criticize someone because the pace in which they're taking those steps doesn't conform to our judgment, it's just so destructive.
Yeah.
Especially when it's their main mode of survival, like a farmer who often you're so deep in the weeds of surviving, especially for these farmers where it's getting harder and harder and harder. It's hard to get you out of that rut, that thought rut.
And a friend of mine, and I don't know if this is controversial or not, but she was working with John Mackey on I forget what it was called. But in any case, she was going around to factory farms and meeting factory farmers, and all of her people in the animal rights community ostracized her. And I was like, no, she's reaching people where they are.
Yeah.
That's, it's never our job to pat ourselves in the back and say, oh, we passed the purity test. The job and I know I'm sorry if I'm preaching, but like the job is to do whatever we can to move the needle away from the current system.
Yeah.
And that by definition involves, we have to work within the current system. You can't just stand back and criticize it. You have to fix it by working within it. And so like kudos to you and the other people who are willing to like reach across the aisle, as it were.
Yeah. Well, I think what you say about, so one of the key reasons movements fail, and this is across all social justice issues, is infighting, is lack of collaboration and this purity idea. And this, I think that is such a worthy thing for us to move away from. And so much of the work that I've been trying to do over the 7 years I've been leading MFA, but really like that's my ethos. I have a real curiosity about why did somebody choose this? And then the why of that, and getting to the root, like my mentor said, like I am curious about the root of decisions and the root of why people are in the position they're in, making the choices they are making right now. And particularly when I first met a factory farmer in 2014, it just totally changed my activism and my theory of change too. Because before, this was in 2014, I had been trying to get on a factory farm and film it. And it had been 10 years since any group had been inside a factory farm and filmed it undercover or not. They had gotten really tight. It's really difficult to get placement. We usually do things through employment, and nobody works on these farms. It's like one farmer going in, picking up dead and dying chickens like twice a day. That's the job. So nobody had seen it, and I wanted to see it. I was literally calling Purdue and being like, will you give me a tour? And they're like, goodbye, click, no, thank you. And word got out about that, and a journalist from Reuters who was from Atlanta called me up and he said, I've got all these papers. Can you come tell me what they are? I don't understand them. They're from a chicken farm. So I met him in a coffee shop, and it was this stack of dirty papers that had the ingredients that chickens are fed. And it was like the precise, like every flock, like what they were being fed. I was like, where did you get this? Because it's commercially sensitive information. And I thought he was going to tell me, oh, it's been, I stole it or undercover or whatever. And he's like, oh, this farmer who's really friendly gave it to me. And I was like, can you introduce me? So this farmer was Craig Watts, who's in North Carolina, in Fairmont, North Carolina. And we started talking on the phone. And it was like, every Sunday we'd start talking. He had 3 kids. And I worked up the courage to say, can I come and visit? And can I bring a camera? And he said yes. I was pretty convinced this was some kind of ambush. I literally gave the address to like my coworker and my husband. And I was like, if I don't come back, look for me in the chicken litter. I'm rotting somewhere under there. And when I got there, though, it was really surprising. I remember sitting in his living room and like looking around his house and talking to him. And he's sharing with me all of his struggles as a farmer. He had seen the same ad I had seen, which was Jim Purdue talking about humanely raised chickens. And they had this label at the time that said humanely raised. And when he saw that ad and him talking about our farmers are happy and our chickens are happy and aren't we great, he was so angry about it in the same way I was angry about it. And somehow I really believe this, the like universe like brought us together to be like, you two, you don't know, but you're the same. You don't know. Mm-hmm. And we met, he let me film, we filmed together. We created a 5-minute video. I'd never done anything like this ever before. Through a friend of mine, gave me the connection to Nicholas Kristof in the New York Times, who's a
phenomenal voice for animals.
Phenomenal voice for animals. Yeah. And he featured the story and it went viral. It was like 1 million views in one 24 hours. And it blew up. It was everywhere because it was this shock of, first of all, a vegan animal rights activist and a chicken factory farmer working together to expose. It was like truth to power. Mm-hmm. And this unlikely partnership. Also, the like consumers are being hoodwinked by this label. It just blew up. It blew up. And I thought, like, how did I not? I was so ashamed of myself in so many ways that I had never thought, never once about this farmer and why he had chosen this path. And through getting to know him, I began to understand why farmers choose this path. And it's really, they are stuck in a cycle of debt and struggle. They are modern day indentured servants. Chicken farmers are modern day indentured servants. They sign a contract in their early 20s, something like that, because they want to stay on the land or they want this life, or there's nothing else going on. He lives in one of the poorest counties in rural North Carolina. They sign the contract. They're told it's going to be great. They have to take $1 million or more out to build all of the warehouses, all the equipment. And then they get a loan that's arranged by the chicken company, and it's like a mortgage, and they have to just keep paying it off, flock after flock after flock. But it's factory farming. So pretty soon the animals get sick. They only get paid for chickens that make it, but the mortgage is the same. And then it just gets worse. And even if they get close to paying off that debt, the company will ask them for upgrades and take another $100,000 million loan. So they're constantly trapped. It's a terrible system. So, the system relies on vulnerability, and it relies on pushing out costs to someone else. We might have a cheap chicken nugget here, but that farmer is $1 million in debt.
I mean, I was first exposed to this, because I grew up in Connecticut. I didn't know anything about farming. And then I lived in New York, and a friend of mine showed me a film he was working on, and I don't know if he ever finished it, but it was interviewing chicken farmers who were trying to convert their chicken farm to a mushroom farm. And it never even crossed, because in my ignorance, I kind of assumed that like people who ran factory farms, chicken farmers, pig farmers, cow farmers, I assumed they were the enemy and they hated me and I hated them, and that there was no common ground. And there was this footage of these chicken farmers sitting at their kitchen table crying.
Yeah.
And just admitting, they're like, we make $15,000 a year. We're $500,000 in debt. And we're sick because we're constantly exposed to all so many horrible things. And I was like, this had never crossed my mind. And I know for you it's self-evident, but it was such an awakening for me. I was like, oh, they hate it. The people who run these factory farms, they hate it almost as much, if not more than I do.
Yeah.
And it was I really hope he finished the film. I'd love to, I'll ask him, but and then it's funny because just recently someone came to me to say that they were researching this idea of transforming animal ag farms. And they said, do you know this woman, Leah Garcés? Because I think she's involved in this. And I was like, so that was my introduction to this idea of transfarmation.
Yeah.
And as an ignorant kid from the suburbs and from New York City and Los Angeles, I know nothing about what's involved. So what are because you obviously are sort of the leader, if not one of the leaders of this movement of transforming farms. So what are the biggest hurdles and what successes have you seen?
Yeah, the biggest hurdle is debt. They just have massive, massive debt. In the United States, chicken farmers owe $5.2 billion collectively. And that's an old number. I'm sure it's higher now. So when Mercy for Animals started Transfarmation in 2019, about a year after I started at Mercy for Animals. And we first started by just putting a website out. Hey, anybody out there are you sick of factory farming? Do you want to end it? Do you want to figure out a way to retrofit your barns and make them into something else? We were inundated. We had over 200 farmers write us within the first month. Everyone was like, yeah, we're curious. How do we do it? And we're like, oh, we weren't ready for that. We weren't ready at all. We had one example that we had filmed of a farmer in West Virginia. His name's Mike Weaver, and he had transitioned his farm to hemp, and he was doing CBD oils that he was selling for anybody. And that we went and we filmed it. That was our example that we had put on this website. And I cannot tell you the number of farmers who have referred to that and said, that's what I want to do. I want to do something else. So we're like, okay, we got to figure this out. We got to figure out how to do it. And I remember actually standing with Gene Bauer and Craig Watts inside Craig's farm going, what do we do with this? What do we do with this warehouse? What could it be? And we went down lots of wrong turns, we thought, oh, blueberries, or we went on strawberry. Well, what do we do? I mean, this is coming from a girl from Atlanta who barely can keep her kale alive in her front yard. Right. So we finally, got enough money, we got funding to hire some ag researchers and economists to help us like crunch the numbers. Because this is like, you can't help farmers unless you can make sure they have enough money to put on the table. And this was a big reality check for me as an activist too, that I can say all I want and factory farming, but behind factory farming is a person with a family and they have to pay their bills. And if I can't come to the table with a solution that replaces that, they're never going to say yes, no matter how much they hate it, because the first need is like taking care of my family and putting food on the table. This is a big reality check for me. And so when we started to crunch those numbers, we looked at 5 products that had the biggest yield in terms of what we thought could work. So specialty mushrooms comes up, highest yields, the highest profit margin. Microgreens is the second, so converting into a warehouse. And hemp was on there, and hemp later came off of there. We started working, and then there was tomatoes, cucumbers, and then flowers, like growing cut flowers. And so we started working with a farm in Texas that we transitioned to hemp first. And they're a beautiful story. They're the Haley family in Texas. And they had been raising chickens for 30 years for Pilgrims, which is one of the largest chicken companies in the country. And the father had died. The mother had 2 jobs. The kids had been working on there. They were now adults, had been trying to make ends meet, and they had fallen into this cycle of debt and struggle. They had gotten close to paying off their debt, and the company asked them to take out another loan. And then they got to that second stage of debt free, and you have to take out another loan if you want to keep with us. And they said no more. And they contacted us and wanted to transition. So I was with them when they picked their first crop of hemp. It was so euphoric, also because I was like covered in hemp oil. It's in my new book, Transfarmation, but I tell the whole story. And they dried the hemp, and then they used it for CBD oil for companion animals with aches and pains. Now, hemp ended up not working for them in the end, and they ended up converting their warehouses to and their land for rescuing dogs from kill shelters, and then getting them well, using some of the CBD oil to get the animals feeling mobile and happy and chill. And then they find homes for them around the country now. And they have a donkey sanctuary. And they're able to survive off of that. And it's such a beautiful arc of like this family that lived in total destruction and debt and struggle to healing. And they're healing animals, they're healing themselves, they're healing their family.
One question is, because again, I don't know anything about the world of agriculture.
Yeah.
I have to work under the assumption that running a factory farm essentially turns the land into a toxic waste dump.
Yeah.
How do you...
This was a big problem. This was a really big problem because inside of the barns is a toxic waste dump.
Yeah.
And the land is so toxic that if you grow anything, it will come up in the plants. We experimented for a little while with a type of cannabis that cleans the soil. I think it's called Goliath, if I'm correct. That they were going to try that for a while and see if they could, but it was going to take too long. Like farmers don't have the time, i.e. money, to wait 10 years for the soil to be clean.
Yeah.
So this was like our first learning. And as we moved on, what we started to do, mushrooms were a great solution. Mushrooms were fantastic. You don't grow mushrooms in the ground. You grow them on substrates. You grow them on blocks of things. And you just need shelves in a cool, dark warehouse. And they have the same kind of life cycle as chickens in the industry. So it's about a 6-week turnover. So you had almost the same thing happening here, but you have mushrooms instead of sentient beings. So we started with Craig Watts was one of our first mushroom growers. We bought a container. He bought a container. We gave him a grant to buy a container. Then he put like HVAC, and he used his old the kind of the barriers that they used to use for the chickens. He made shelves out of them, put the substrate for oyster mushrooms on there, and grew mushrooms. And he was able to sell those. We then started working with another one in North Carolina, and we decided we'd create a hub. So in North Carolina, we created with Tom Lim, who is a refugee and had been growing chickens for a long time and decided he wanted to get out too. We transitioned one of his whole warehouses into a greenhouse. And so he grows microgreens and in a container grows mushrooms. So nothing is growing in the ground. They're growing like we traditionally would do a greenhouse. They're growing in containers, in boxes where their soil is brought in.
And is there a way, in terms of like healing the soil? Because like I live here right by the park.
Yeah.
And the way, like when I first moved into my house, it was just grass.
Yeah.
Grass and non-natives.
Yeah.
And so we tore out the grass and I basically let the leaf litter just land on the soil, and I would never bag it up. When it was autumn, I just sweep more leaves onto the soil. And as a result, my soil is incredibly healthy because one thing I learned, healthy soil, I assumed it was just like, oh, there's water, nutrients, these generic ideas of what's in soil, but it's the bacterium.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering, is there a way of like inexpensively, easily healing the soil? Like basically encourage it, like is it some medium that would enable the healthy bacteria in the soil to grow? So, because obviously like no one wants to live with toxic soil. Like, and are there cheap, easy ways? And then once it's obviously, if you've healed the soil, you can grow things in the soil. So I'm just wondering if you've looked into, like, 'cause it seems like what you're describing, keeping in mind I don't fully know what I'm talking about, is avoiding the soil.
Yeah.
Building shelves with substrate, having containers. But I'm like, my experience is the soil can be healed.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love, like, I don't know, federal grant money to do science around that and figure out how to do that. I think our focus has been about these very tight profit margins that farmers need to make to get them out of factory farming. And I hope that's like phase 2. I am with you on the rewilding. Like I rewild our backyard and you put like tubers in the soil to break it up. And then you have like a year of row crops that put nitrogen in.
Yeah.
And we did try to get a USDA grant actually around this, considering growing row crops in between the houses. And it would bring nitrogen back into the soil. You would break up the soil and you would begin to invite that bacteria back in. We did not succeed in that. And anyway, now it would have been taken away from us if we had. So
I'd be really fascinated. I mean, it might be a side note to the business model of what's making this viable.
Yeah.
But I just think it'd be so nice to heal these farms as comprehensively as possible.
I agree.
So if there's, I just think it's so interesting what makes for a healthy ecosystem.
I agree. And
Maybe
there's so
some
much
private funders that could come forward, as government grants might not be an easy thing to come by.
Yeah.
I would go even further. I would say like the government itself might not exist soon.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Like that's top of their list is like, how do they destroy the entire United States government?
Yeah.
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 So in any case.
Luckily, they never, I mean, for us, it hasn't impacted us tremendously because they never did anything good for farmed animals anyway. So we were
it's like
incredibly reliant on them anyhow. We're not reliant.
Yeah.
The U.S. government has not done very good things for farmed animals ever.
So you've done, how many of these farms have you taken?
Have you transformed?
Yeah, have you transformed?
Yeah. So we do about 8 to 10 a year, and we've been doing this for 3 years. So it's not as many as I would like. And it makes me realize, but it's still, very meaningful stories are being created with each of these folks. We have 2 hubs, one in Iowa and one in North Carolina.
When you say hubs, what do you mean?
Right. Good question. So they are where we want to have learning centers for other farmers to come and see, and also bring decision makers, politicians, corporations, funders, who can help us further transition. So in Iowa, this was the Faubourg family, and they had been raising pigs for 30 years. And they had a son who was very like environmentalist and said, I don't want to do this anymore. And the parents were like, okay, if you can figure out another system, then do. And now Tanner Faubourg runs the farm, and he's transitioned into mushrooms, and we've been helping with that. But we've created it like a hub so that everything they learn is publicly available on the website. So if you want to know how to get from a pig farm to a mushroom farm, there's like a step-by-step process for you as a farmer on how to do that, which mushrooms work, which don't, that kind of thing. And that was part of the deal of us helping this farmer is like, you need to make this publicly accessible to anybody. And the one in North Carolina I told you about is the one who changed the refugee who went from chickens to mushrooms and microgreens. And so now we're thinking, really, this is about narrative change. Mm-hmm. That's the main, probably the best outcome of this is we're changing people's minds about what factory farming is and what corporate farming looks like in America. Farmers are not happy. That's what we're trying to get. The message we're trying to get across is farmers don't want this. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled by Tyson. Don't be fooled when they tell you farmers are happy and they're using their family farm in like a commercial. That is not the truth. The truth is this. And we're training these farmers to be spokespeople in their communities. So they're going through, we have a kind of training now for these 8 to 10 farmers that they go through to also become media spokespeople. And they can be activists in their community. They can speak out against this system. And how much better is that than me doing it? If you're in Idaho, Iowa, or North Carolina, or Texas, or Alabama, and you're like the person living there who did it and saying, this is really bad for us. This is bad for our community. And so we're creating these like sparks, hopefully. And that to me is what we need to do. We need to change the narrative because the majority of Americans think the way we're farming is fine and they don't know.
And the majority of vegans and animal rights people think that the farmers are the enemy.
Right.
When actually they're just stuck in a system that is unbelievably harmful.
Yes.
So if there is a farmer that for some reason can't be one of your farms that you can touch in a year, do you have guidelines or ideas for how these other farmers that might not get the support directly from MFA, like what they can do?
Yes, we have a farmer's website. We have a site that is everything we're learning. We are putting on the website for them to be able to use. So it's a farmer's toolkit. Mm-hmm. And that's where we send people who we can't help directly. And usually we can't help people directly who have too much debt. So we can only help people who are close to that point of having little debt or they were about to sign another contract and they're, not going to do it or don't want to do it. We can't help people that have, $5 million in debt. It's too much. We can't promise that we can still help you put food on the table. That's when I really strongly believe that we have to change the story so that people are rising up and they're bringing the story to the decision makers in government, and the government will move away from factory farming if we can create that power from the ground up. Right now, the government subsidizes factory farming. It's a totally broken system. It only exists because our tax dollars help it exist.
Right.
If we stripped that away, gave that money instead to farmers to transition, we would overnight see the end of factory farming. And we've seen this in historically in the United States. This has happened before. It happened with tobacco. We had the Tobacco Reform Act under Reagan. And when it became clear we have to move away from tobacco because there had been a whole movement against this, there was the truth campaigns. I don't know if you know those. They were very, very powerful activism, plus the health around that. And the administration was like, okay, we're not going to get reelected if we still stay with these tobacco folks. We're ending tobacco. And they did the Tobacco Reform Act. Mm-hmm. And it was a tobacco buyout program. And so farmers could sign up to overnight get pay a bail to get out of tobacco farming and move to something else. That's what we need for factory farming. And Cory Booker actually tried to do that. He created the Farm Systems Reform Act. It was a symbolic bill, but it was a powerful effort and kind of map of what we could do, where it put a moratorium on factory farming. It did a debt cancellation for farmers and gave them transition money to move to something more humane and sustainable.
I think all the time about how easy it would be because obviously there is demand for this product. And as long as there is enough demand for a product, the government, it's going to be very hard to dissuade them from subsidizing the product. When you say product, you mean lives.
Meat, dairy, and eggs. Yeah.
Yeah, meat, dairy, and eggs.
Yeah.
Any product, but specifically that one for what we're talking about.
Yeah.
What do you think, I mean, what does MFA do to kind of shift public perception around what they eat, how they eat, and what can we all do? I mean, anyone that cares about this cause.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And as somebody who's been more or less beating my head against a wall on this question for 25 years now, I've seen one pathway really open up for us that I'm finding to be an interesting new pathway for success. And this is the work we're doing around what is commonly referred to as default veg or default vegan. So we have been working with counties or cities based on them trying to either get their county or city healthy or emissions targets and have them adopt a vegan by default policy. And that's a short way of saying it. But the idea is that instead of putting the omnivore, the meat option, as the default, and then you have to ask to be vegan, you have to ask for the vegan option, you flip it and you put the vegan option as the main option, and you can add in the meat if you want it. So you're not taking away anybody's choices because nobody likes that, but you're changing the norm, the standard, what's in front of you. And there was a study done that comparing two different conferences where one conference had the meat was the offering and you had to add the vegan, and the other was vegan and you had to add the meat. And there was an 80% reduction when you put the vegan default.
Oh, that's huge.
No one complained. If somebody really wanted meat, they added it. Because humans, I think we give too much credit to like choice. Like we're not choosing anything. We're just doing the thing that everyone around us is doing and what's in front of us. And if we can change the default, we start to nudge the norm in the direction we want. And we're finding this to be a very successful strategy. So LA County, which is the largest county in the United States, agreed to a kind of default default vegan policy.
And is that in businesses or just in like government?
Government. Okay. So they're parks and recs, but also they're hospitals. So anything that the county touches and pays for.
I see.
We also had West Hollywood agree to that. And we're starting this as a policy that we're working. We have 30 cities or counties we're working to get this achieved now. And I think that's like, to me, the most promising thing that MFA is doing right now. The other thing is, if you haven't noticed, there's no surcharge at like Starbucks and Pete's and these for non-dairy milks now. So we did campaigns, we negotiated, we collaborated to get these companies to get rid of the surcharge. So removing barriers, making it easier is something MFA has always tried to do, but I think we're finally like finding some pathways that are pushing it in the right direction.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting from my naive perspective, like we're talking about transformation, but it also seems like the notion of transitioning, of transforming is in a way, that's the word of the 21st century. You know, transitioning, obviously there's the gender aspect to it, but there's transitioning away from gas cars to electric cars, transitioning away from physical media to virtual media, but also hearing you describe MFA, like it's transforming or transitioning charities, 501c3s, because for years, when I would go to events, the work was mainly exposés on local media. You know, like getting like Phoenix, the 8 p.m. news in Phoenix on Channel 2 to cover this, and obviously that doesn't really exist anymore. Yeah. So it's really interesting to hear about these programs that my assumption is hadn't really been a part of the 501c3 landscape up until pretty recently.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. We've had to get very savvy because farmed animals receive such a fraction of the charity money out there and we have to prove that we're making a difference, right? And so we've had to be so strategically ruthless and think through, like, what are our efforts doing? And as we've matured as a movement too, as we've, people like me have been 25 years working in this field. I'm like, I'm frustrated. Like, I want to see some change. Like, how can we actually say when I'm on my deathbed, I like know this happened and it's sticking? You know, not just like leafleting or, you know, getting angry and exposing something. All those are necessary part of the environment we need to operate in. But I need to know that this company is going to no longer serve this cruel product. I need the bad choices to just not be there for people. And we've focused on institutional change as a big part of what we need to do, because you can get a policy, and that policy, we know the number of animals that are better off because of that. Underneath that, though, is cultural change. So I would say Mercy for Animals is still really thinking about how do we drive culture and change norms and change the norms that are in front of us. So I think of things like Burger King having an Impossible Whopper now. Now, we don't know how many animals that's taking off the plate, but we do know that everyone is getting exposed to it being normal to have a vegan option.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, the most basic broad way of thinking is like moving the needle.
Yeah.
And some things move the needle in big ways, and other things are that slow micron by micron, you know, the incremental movement. And yeah, so like personally, I'm never going to eat an Impossible Burger at Burger King, but anything that you're right, that normalizes it, that, you know, that vegan by default, not just the literal aspect of it, but the sort of like the figurative aspect. Like, I'm sure we all have friends who are not vegan, but they're kind of vegan by default.
Right.
You know, like if they're having a dinner party and they're inviting 3 of their vegan friends, it's going to be vegan, and maybe one of the guys will have something not vegan. So it is that, considering 1987, no one even knew what the word vegan meant, you know, and in 1987, there were 2 vegan restaurants in the entire world. Things are changing.
Yeah. Come a long way from TVP.
Yeah. Good old TVP. I will not sit idly by while you malign TVP. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you brought TVP to a dinner party, people would be like, what is that floating in the chili?
Well, the first question would be like, did you bring dog food? Yeah.
Exactly. And I think it's what we've learned also. There's a book called Change by Damien Santola that everyone at Mercy for Animals like studied and we're like following, which is how change works. And they've studied different movements and how change happens. Change doesn't happen at a personal level because you saw like Joaquin Phoenix do it, right? Or a celebrity that you're like, I love that. I want to be like that person. Like, that's admirable. They do it because their immediate social circle does it. And if you go vegan, unless you're a very special person and no one else around you does, your chances of going back to not being vegan are very high. So what we're now focused on is community cluster change, where we find these clusters of likely, but not yet, communities that would change. So for example, yoga communities. So already got the whole like peace and body health and compassion is like a part of the ethos and like
Hamsa.
Yeah, apart from, as we saw during the pandemic, the number of people in like the Erewhon yoga community who became insane QAnon people.
Yes.
So I agree with you.
Yes.
Like, it was very surprising, like how people went from like, oh, namaste, ahimsa, to being like, where we go one, we go all.
Yeah.
And if you're vaccinated, you can't come into our yoga studio.
Yeah. Like,
wow.
It definitely. Like,
that's not my experience in Atlanta. Maybe
luckily.
That's it. Like, but I think that a lot of like yoga people are pretty like oriented toward compassion. So imagine, for the most part. So if you were to go out, let's say you went to dinner with your yoga friends, and the norm with those friends is to order plant-based, and you would never even not do that. Because if you did, people would be like, what are you doing? Like, that's not what we do.
Yeah, there used to be, and maybe it still exists, and I don't want to criticize them, there was this big yoga organization called Wanderlust. And I performed at a few of these Wanderlust festivals because it seemed interesting. Like, go up to the mountain.
I've definitely seen the brand. Like, it's a brand, right?
Yeah, it was like, go up to the mountain and I'd play music and then do yoga and meet interesting people. And I was a little stunned. They had a Wanderlust studio here with meat on the menu. And you would go to these festivals and they were serving meat. And luckily, part of going there meant I was able to speak.
Right.
Like I was like, well, I'll DJ or I'll perform, but also I want to speak.
Yeah.
And every time I would just say like, hey, when you guys, at the end of the session, you say, may all beings be free from harm and suffering. I'm like, guess what? The animals you're eating are not free from harm and suffering. They died as a result of harm and suffering. And it's been, so I think what you're describing is noble, but then there's that bizarre intransigence on the part of some entitled communities. And I encountered, unfortunately, a lot with progressive politicians and people. Like AOC and Bernie eating hamburgers and sausages. I'm like, it's almost like, and maybe I'll get in trouble saying this, it's like people who define themselves as being good and on the side of righteousness feel like they can't do wrong. And if you go to them and say like, no, as a matter of fact, what you're doing is inconsistent, hypocritical, and unethical. Yeah. They're like, but I'm a progressive. I can't be those things. Yeah. I'm like, but you are.
I actually really want, I think my futures, when I look into the future, I feel some kind of calling around breaking down this idea that animal protection is just a progressive value, or veganism. And I want to figure that out. I want to figure out that it's not. That it can't be. It can't be just, it cannot be a polarized issue. It can't be something that's because just what you're describing, I see people on both sides doing right and wrong, in this area. And that's interesting because there's not a lot of issues like that. I'm sorry to bring up my dad again, but he's my conservative Trump voting, Latino father who cares about animals a lot. And he sends me now articles, and every time he sends me something, I'm micro studying him. He has no idea. What is the conservative Trump voter? Yeah, Trump voter. Yeah, he'll know now. Think about, and he sent me this article the other day. He was about 5 interesting facts about cows. He's like, this is fascinating. Cows can make friends. I didn't know that, and he got it from I don't even know. It's some
Parade magazine.
Oh, he was. Yeah, it was. It was something pretty conservative. It was I followed the link of where he got this from, and it was some conservative 5 interesting facts about cows. And I'm like, okay, so he thinks cows are interesting. That's a pathway. What? Maybe I need to instead of being judgy and telling him why it's wrong, I need to be look how awesome these animals are, and try to what are the bridges there?
You're right. The encouragement, and it's so hard when we're all so passionate. And when you wake up every day knowing that 100 billion animals are going to be killed this week. It's hard to not scream. It's hard to not want to throw firebombs through slaughterhouses. It's not it's just. But it's something I had to learn a long time ago. It's okay. As we were saying in the beginning, the only thing that matters, what helps animals. I work for animals 100%. The only criteria for strategy is this helping animals? Right. And making myself feel good, making myself feel righteous doesn't matter unless it leads to helping animals. Right.
Yeah. One way I put this to sometimes activists who are we're not going to work with non-vegans. They have to be vegan. I say, okay, what sounds easier to you? Making half of the world vegan or getting the whole world to eat 50% less animals? I mean, obviously the latter. The same outcome for animals. The same thing. The animals will have the same benefit. So let's do the thing that we think we can actually do. And then we can get to the everyone vegan part. There's no, that Mercy for Animals vision is a world where animals are not exploited for food and they get to just live their lives free. But we have to accept the world we're also in and not, the other analogy I'll often use, which is borrowed, is imagine you're a prisoner in death row. Have you heard this one before? This analogy? Okay. Imagine you're a prisoner in death row and you're in a horrible condition, overcrowded, they mutilate you, all the things, factory farming. And would you rather have someone advocating only for the end of your death sentence or improving the conditions you're in while they're working to end your death sentence? You would want both. You wouldn't want to suffer without any knowledge of when or if this death sentence is going to stop or not. You would want both. So Mercy for Animals also works to reduce the suffering of the animals that are for the foreseeable future trapped in the system. So we are advocating to get rid of all the cruelest practices, create cages and crates and cruel slaughter practices, all these things. And I think that's important. And the idea is you're reducing suffering, increasing compassion. And that scale has to tip.
Because even those conversations that you're having with, think about what these animals go through, starts turning switches in your brain to say, animals suffer. They're not just sitting on a farm.
Yeah.
They're not wandering around in a beautiful field on a mountainside.
Yeah.
So it does two things.
Yeah.
It reduces the suffering and it gets people thinking, oh, that is bad.
Yeah.
You know?
And there is a lot of binary thinking in the world, obviously, like us versus them. And as we know in the animal rights world, they're sort of like the incrementalists versus the abolitionists. Like, we're both.
I'm both.
You know, like it's, I just think of the golden rule. You know, like if I were a pig in a gestation crate, would I want an abolitionist saying, and I'm all in favor, I'm an abolitionist, but would I want them saying like, oh, your suffering doesn't matter right now. What matters is creating a 100% vegan world.
Yeah.
The pig is probably a little more interested in just not being in a gestation crate.
Right.
You know, so like, it's that, like, if I were a chicken on a factory farm, you know, in a CAFO, would I want to be 100% free, or at the very least be able to move around and flap my wings? You know, it's like, it's that simple, like what creates less suffering right now, or like in the achievable future.
Yeah.
So one question I wanted to ask you is, because you're obviously like, you're in the trenches more than almost anybody's in the trenches. There's a recurring thing I've noticed in the activist world is self-care. You know, like in sobriety, there's an old cliche is like the first part of service is taking care of yourself. And like, if you want to be of service to other people, you have to be healthy, you know. So how do you practice and prioritize your own self-care?
I do. I really do. I had to learn this the hard way. I went through some pretty bad bouts of depression that led me to a kind of breaking point where I really wanted to still help animals, but I didn't know if I could, because I thought I just, you know, have gotten to rock bottom. And through a lot of different interventions, I was able to develop a practice. And that practice for me, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be able to continue. And sometimes I get I'm so into this work that I forget about that. And I feel myself winding up, and then I have to return to the practice. And so for me, there's a couple of things that I do. I do exercise every morning of some kind. So yoga, yoga.
Oh, no,
sometimes.
we all do. Yes. I do yoga 5 times a week.
Right. So I do hot yoga, or I do running, or what I call midlife CrossFit. It's not real CrossFit. It's like it's like
you flipped small tires.
Yeah, no tire. It's like it's all about like your future health, rather. It's like prehab or something like that. But you know, so I do that exercise, and then I meditate and do breath work for about 30 minutes. And I learned the breath work through a silent meditation retreat that I went on.
With Ari Nessel?
No, not Ari Nessel. No.
When I hear silent meditation retreat, I immediately think of
Yes, but Ari
one is happening right this very second as we're
Yes,
talking.
it is. That's right. But probably about 10 years ago, it was Ari Nessel is a person in the animal movement who has done a lot to bring meditation into our movement as a practice of grounding and I guess self-care too. And I was very dismissive. I really thought this was like a bro thing, because it was like Sam Harris, and it was like I was like, who is doing this? Like, why do I have to do this? I don't want to do this. This is weird, and I don't like it.
Yeah, I want to throw rocks through Burger King.
Yeah, this is not for me. Like, I cannot stop the chatter, and I don't want to, because I think my anxiety is actually fueling me to achieve things. Like, I think that's what I thought. And but we all have our, you know, breaking points, and I had that, and I started. Ari graciously gifted me a mindful leadership class with Spirit Rock it was a workshop for like 4 months, where I learned about, we would meditate. Felt like the longest half hours of my life. My God, I would sit there and like, if it was in the evening, I'd definitely fall asleep. Like I would not, but over time, some little cracks started to come through where I felt some like sense I had never felt of peace, of like just quietness, just being quiet. And, I have 3 kids too. So life is never, and animals at home too, other animals. So I did that. And then I started meditating regularly. I also worked with a woman named Brielle Ringer, who is amazing. And I worked with her for 4 months.
Great name too. It sounds like someone from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, she's basically that. She's a total warrior but for self-care. And just over time, very slowly, I started to cultivate this practice. And then I did this silent meditation retreat, which was 5 days. And that was where I learned breath work, which I added to my meditation. So I actually wake up like 2.5 hours before work and do slow, waking up, exercise, meditation, breakfast. I have to get my kids off to school. And without that, I don't know what I do. I also take my vacations. I do not work on the weekends for the most part, except when there's conferences like the one coming up this weekend. I don't work in the evenings. Like I have boundaries and they're really important. And if you don't have those and you think that you can just keep working and working and working, you will soon find out that doesn't.
Yeah, I've seen tragically, sadly, so many people get burned out.
The burnout is real.
It really is. And because of that, that's another thing I brought into MFA. So I did things like created our first parental leave policy. I created a sabbatical policy. So after 5 years, you get a month off. After 7, you get 2 paid. And after 10 years, you get 3 paid, which is unheard of in our world. I remember when they offered me the contract and it was like 7 days vacation. And I had been working at a British organization where that's like against the law. Like it's like 28 days or something was the minimum. And I was like, absolutely not. And they're like, okay, we'll put it in your contract. And when you become the CEO, you can like change it. And I did. And I increased vacation for everybody. I increased our medical care, everything around the care part of things. And I created we have deep work on Fridays. So there's no meetings and you're supposed to just be able to like think and do the bigger work. And once a month on Fridays, we all have the day off. So it's called Team Care Day. And so I did a lot also to bring that to Mercy for Animals because I need people and animals need us all to work the long span of time that we need to do this work. And this is a marathon. It is not a sprint. We need to connect to ourselves. We also need to have the time and the space to get into yourself and know what your contribution is. Like everyone's different and you need to have that quiet mind and that clear heart to be able to hear that.
Yeah. And also a lot of us are getting older. And a lot of us like when you're 23, you're like, I can go out and I can drink and I can take drugs and I can get 2 hours sleep and I can be crazy and I can be present and I can have tons of energy. And like all of a sudden you're in your 30s and your 40s and your 50s and you're like, oh, I'm still, in my case, like not the drinking and the doing drugs, but like I'm surprised at like things that make me a little bit tired now, things that deplete my energy, I was not even aware of 20 or 30 years ago. And a lot of people in the animal rights movement started when they were teenagers. And you hold yourself to these standards of energy that made sense when you were 19, but less so when you're 49, 50, et cetera.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I just don't want to be that role model, though, either I want to be the right role model for the next, whoever's going to lead MFA, next. Like, you can be a whole person. You need to be a whole person. And actually, that's going to help us relate and widen that tent.
Yeah.
If we look like this very hardcore, exclusive way of living, who's going to want to be part of that? We need to make it opener and make it so that people can come as their whole self, however they are. They can have kids, they can have travel plans and vacations, and they can still help animals. And they can do it really well because when they show up, they're like 150% energy and they're got great ideas and they're innovative and they're creative. Like we need that. We need a whole person.
Yeah.
So we've been recording for some time. I wanted to kind of start wrapping up. And one of the questions I have is, for people that want to get involved with MFA, for people that want to help, what would you say to the regular person who wants to get involved with MFA?
Yeah, well, much in the vein of what we've been talking about, I think you can start anywhere. And the most amazing thing, I think, about helping farmed animals, unlike other social justice issues, other social justice issues when you think, oh, how do I today, right now, know that I helped like reduce racism, reduce like sexism or something like that? It's very hard. But with this work, literally every single bite you take that's different, you are making the life of a farm animal better if you choose to not put them on your plate. And that can be a third of your plate, a half of your plate, one fork. It could be anything. But everything you're doing is a step in the right direction if you want it to be. And I feel like that's just such an inspirational like invitation to be part of making the world a better place. The bar is very low. It's not hard. You can just have one meal that's different.
Yeah.
And the Swiss Army knife aspect of it, like by doing that, obviously you're benefiting your health, you're benefiting the animals, reducing climate change, preventing pandemics, reducing water use, reducing healthcare spending, protecting workers, on and on and on and on. Like
win.
Yeah. So it's like, I wish there was some way of really just sort of like making everyone aware of that, like to go to progressives and say, hey, every part of your agenda benefits by eliminating factory farming.
Yep.
Communities benefit, workers benefit, et cetera. Just on and on. I know that we know that, so sometimes we don't mention it amongst ourselves, but it's such a powerful rallying cry. It's like, go vegan and everything benefits. The only thing, Purdue, Cargill, et cetera, they don't benefit if everyone goes vegan. But every other aspect of the world, human health, environmental health, climate, et cetera, just benefits so much.
Yeah. And if you want to be a bigger part of it, besides just what you're putting in your own body, you can join MFA on so many different ways. You can join any of our social media just to share and like and spread the word. That pushes up our algorithms too, if you're doing that. So more that gets in front of other people. Plus, you could join any one of our actions. So if you go onto our website, you can sign up. We need help. Just number of people contacting a company helps push them in the right direction. Like, hey, get rid of the surcharge for plant-based milks. And you can be a volunteer. You can be trained to be like a coordinator of volunteers. You can go up and up and up. And of course, donating to us helps us do this work. So there's just a myriad of ways. I think my main thought, though, is don't let perfect be the enemy of better. Not everyone is welcome, and wherever you're at.
And lastly, you guys have really good merch.
We
merch
do
is
have
great.
good merch.
Yeah, like my drawers are filled with MFA merch, and I'm like, Farm Sanctuary also has some pretty good merch.
Yeah.
A lot of people have good merch, but boy, oh boy, the MFA merch.
Thank you.
Killer.
Coziest sweatshirts I have.
I know.
So good.
And I should get you some of our international offices. Like our Brazil merch is even cooler, I have to say. They're killing it. They I love their style. Anyway, we do have great merch, and that's just a really easy way to both, and it's nice merch. It's like love animals, or like, it's very soft messaging that you could walk anywhere into your Thanksgiving dinner and it would be fine.
And it looks really good on social media.
It looks great. I like to wear my Mercy for Animals sweatshirt to Barry's boot camp.
Love it.
Yeah. Communicate to the protein heads.
Thank you.
Yeah, way to sort of like humble brag.
I go to Barry's boot camp.
When I go to Barry's boot camp every morning at 7 a.m. Yeah, fine. While I'm sitting home just like reading about how terrible the world is and everything's falling apart.
Oh, don't worry. I do that before and after, but
So thank you for giving us so much of your time. This has been amazing. I mean, whatever we can do to help you, help MFA. I mean, you're such an inspired, I'm sorry if I seem sycophantic, but you're like an inspired and inspiring voice in this movement. So smart and so rational and so experienced. So it's an honor to be involved and help out however we can.
Ditto. And we'll put Transfarmation, your book, in the show notes.
Great.
As well as Grilled.
Great. Thank you.
And anything else important that Leah sends us will all be
Like
in the
my
show
husband's band name.
Obviously, that will be in the show
That's
notes.
critical.
Yes, critical. But yeah, that'll all be there with easy links to go buy or look or whatever.
Yes.
I mean, I
Well-
assume it's going to be something cool like Time of Endeavor. Or
I remember getting like a cassette tape sent like to Spain and listening to him and going, what the heck is this? Like,
So romantic.
Forest of Entropy. Like,
Yeah.
they all have these sort of like,
well, I also want to thank you all for having me. And, you know, it's so great to get to know you, Lindsay, a little bit better. And Moby, you have been a firm supporter of Mercy for Animals. It is safe to say we would not be where we are without you. You have supported us all along. So I'm grateful.
well, you guys make it easier and easier.
Yeah, thank you both for creating a platform for people to be able to talk about compassion. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Leah.
Okay.
And thank you, Bagel. You're such
Bagel in her shirt.
and your little mohawk that was being cultivated while we were talking.
Her little mohawk. Good job, Bagel.
Okay, so that was our wonderful conversation with the wonderful Leah Garcés.
I have a link to buy her book in the show notes, so definitely go check it out there. I also have a link to follow Mercy for Animals and stay up to date with what they're doing, because they're always doing something really cool and inspiring. So definitely stay in touch with both of those people, that person and the organization, because they're wonderful.
And I'd like to say thank you to Leah.
Thanks, Leah.
And to Mercy for Animals, and to Bagel, and to you, and to Aaron Steeler, and Jonathan Nezvadba, and Human Content, and Bagel again. Bagel's just, I know that this is an audio platform and the cameras aren't on Bagel, but she's just staring at me, and now she wants to show her scrunchie.
She's got a really good scrunchie today. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. And Mo, thank you for being the name and face of this podcast. And we'll see you all very soon.